Karoline Leavitt demolishes Ilhan Omar and Democrats on live TV, reveals her madness. The White House press room was buzzing like a kicked-over beehive. The harsh glare of overhead LED lights bathed the space in a sterile white glow, spotlighting rows of reporters, some thumbing through notebooks, others fiddling with camera gear, all waiting for the big show to start. The whispers had kicked off well before the briefing even got underway. A CNN guy leaned over to his buddy, voice low but cutting. "You hear about this new press secretary?" The Politico reporter smirked, tapping his pen on the table. "Yeah, word is she's a real bulldog. Let's see how long she lasts. Maybe a month, tops 2. A New York Times journo chuckled, eyes glued to his phone. "Think she'll duck the Omar question?" A Washington Post voice piped up. "No way in hell." The chatter rolled on, guesses, side bets, muffled laughs, until a Fox News reporter near the back broke in, tone dead certain. "Y'all have no idea what's coming, do you?" The CNN guy swiveled. "What, you got some inside scoop?" The Fox reporter kicked back in his chair, arms crossed, grinning like he'd already watched this movie. "Let's just say you're about to see a bloodbath." Then the door swung open. The room went stone-cold silent, like someone hit the mute button. Camera lenses swiveled, phones shot up, reporters snapped to attention. They could smell a fight brewing from a mile away. Karoline Leavitt strolled in, cool as ice, steady as a rock. She claimed the podium like it was hers by birthright, scanning the crowd with eyes that weren't just confident. They were plotting. She was here to throw down, and every soul in the room felt it. Adjusting the mic, she leaned in a hair and dropped her opening line like a blade. "Trump's new press secretary is about to tear Ilhan Omar and the whole Democratic machine apart for their violence-stoking nonsense. You won't want to miss this." For a split second, the place froze. Then came the frantic scratch of pens on paper, a few sideways glances. Some smirked, others gritted their teeth. They knew this wasn't going to be some run-of-the-mill briefing. This was a showdown. A voice sliced through the hush, sharp and clean. "Peter here." Peter Ducey, calm but loaded, the kind of reporter who never wastes a question and never lobs a softball. "Thanks, Karoline." She nodded, face unreadable, but a flicker of glee danced in her eyes, like they were about to play a game she'd already mastered. "Any officials here gearing up to brawl with Democratic lawmakers in the streets?" She didn't blink. "Not a chance." Peter didn't pause, just exhaled like he was flipping through his mental Rolodex. "Appreciate that," he said, leaning forward a touch, landing the morning's first real haymaker. "Some elected Dems are losing it over Doge. Congresswoman Monica MacGyver says we're at war. Ilhan Omar's hinting someone might end up dead. Chris Van Hollen's talking about fighting this in Congress and out on the streets." It wasn't just a question, it was a dare. Karoline's lips twitched. Was that a smirk? Tough to tell. She let the words hang, taking her sweet time, like she was savoring the build-up to her counterpunch. "So what's the deal now?" Peter pressed, knowing the floor was hers. Then with a slow, deliberate pace that had even the grizzled vets bracing themselves, she kicked off. "Let me point something out." Her voice steady, almost casual, but laced with the edge that had already made her a legend. "If you heard that kind of fire-starting talk from our side, from Republican bigwigs up on Capitol Hill," she paused for a beat, then swung, "I bet this room would be a hell of a lot louder with outrage." Reactions sparked. A few shifted in their seats. A stifled grin flashed from the Fox corner. Someone clicked their pen a little too hard. She'd landed the first blow. The quiet wasn't just quiet anymore. It was the kind of hush you get right before the next punch flies, and nobody wanted to miss it. Karoline let the moment linger, taking her time. A couple seconds to let them soak it in. Let them realize they just walked into a hit they didn't see coming. Then she doubled down. "The stuff coming out of these Democratic leaders? It's flat out unacceptable." Her tone still cool, firm, but now with a bite. No more jabs. This was a straight-up slug. "And honestly, they don't even know what they're yapping about." Pens stalled mid-scratch. Eyes darted between neighbors. Did she just say that out loud? Damn right she did, and she wasn't done. Leaning into the mic a touch, she kept it even, crisp, like she was breaking down basic arithmetic for a bunch of folks who couldn't add 2 and 2. "President Trump got elected with a clear mandate from the American people to whip this government into shape." A few eyebrows ticked up. Not a fresh talking point, but the way Karoline delivered it, tight, bold, daring anyone to push back, gave it new muscle. He crisscrossed this country campaigning with Elon Musk, promising Elon run the Department of Government Efficiency. That snapped heads up. Elon Musk, if there's one name that lights a press room on fire, it's him. The two of them, with a crack team behind them, are gonna dig through this federal government's receipts and make damn sure it answers to American taxpayers. She paused, not because she had to, but because she wanted them to sit with it. Then with a sly half smirk, she sealed it, clean and unshakable. That's it. No fireworks, no circus, just the facts. Fingers flew faster across keyboards. A few reporters swapped silent looks, waiting for the next challenger to step up. Karoline stood tall, expression locked. The ball was in their court now, and she had zero to lose. The lull after her last answer didn't last long, but it was enough. Reporters fidgeted, laptops popped open, murmurs rippled through. Classic sign of a reset in the works. Then a familiar voice cut in. One more thing. Karoline tilted her head a hair. Bring it on. NBC's reporting some illegal immigrants who got rounded up and locked up aren't being deportation, the reporter said, voice level but loaded. Instead, they're getting cut loose with ankle or wrist trackers, or just told to check in by phone. He took a breath. So is the administration hauling in more people than you've got room to hold? Not just a question, a trap. Admit it, and it's a flop. Dodge it, and they'd pounce. Karoline didn't bite either way. She flashed a faint smile and waded right into the fray. I've seen those reports, and I'm glad you brought it up because we're going to clear the air on this. Simple but slick. She wasn't defending. She was owning it before they could spin it. She held the room's gaze, delivering the next bit smooth, controlled, unflinching. As of this morning, per the info I got from DHS, 461 illegal immigrants have been let out of custody. Pens scratched, keys clacked harder. She let it sink in, then dropped the hammer. Out of over 8,000 nabs since President Trump took office. That's less than 6%. A shift, not loud but real. A few reporters straightened up, catching that this wasn't going how they'd figured. But Karoline, she was just warming up. Why'd they get released? Couple reasons, she said, holding up a finger, ticking them off. Not rushed, not defensive, just deliberate. For some, there's no real shot at deporting them anytime soon. For others, it's about detention space, something this president and this administration have been loud as hell about. And in a few cases, serious health issues played a part. No fluff, no over-explaining, just cold, hard facts. Then she twisted the knife. But let's be crystal. None of them have final deportation orders. A bunch are probably fighting their immigration status. She let that sit a second, resting a hand on the podium. A quiet challenge. Want more? Ask DHS. I brought this data because I knew it had come up. She nodded, slamming the door shut. So thanks. A beat of silence. Not because they were out of ammo, of course not, but because this wasn't the comeback they'd banked on. The vibe in the room shifted, subtle but there. Domestic political scraps? That's everyday stuff. But Gaza, war, U.S. military moves? This wasn't just another sparring match. This was headline fuel for weeks. A voice broke through, measured, careful, not rushing, because whoever was asking knew they were setting up something big. The president and you have made it plain. Given the wreckage, you think Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza? A few heads popped up from screens, sensing this wasn't some policy softball. This was the question. But Palestinians say it's their home. They don't want to go. And last night, the president said he'd use the military if he has to. Is the U.S. ready to force Palestinians out of Gaza? A couple chairs creaked. Not much, but enough to show even the pros felt the weight. Karoline didn't flinch. She locked eyes with the reporter, face a blank slate. The president's ready to rebuild Gaza for Palestinians and everyone in the region. Folks who want peace, who want real economic growth and a shot at something better. Precise, steady, not backing off, not ramping up. This is a place run by Hamas, a terrorist outfit propped up by Iran that's brutalized not just Israelis but Palestinians too. A few fingers froze mid-type, clocking that this wasn't just an answer, it was a full reframing. It's because of Hamas you're seeing those pictures on your screens. It's because of Hamas Gaza's a rubble heap. They kicked off that savage attack on Israel October 7th. Silence isn't rare in these things, but this was different. Not boredom silence. The kind where something hits and folks are chewing it over right then and there. Karoline didn't skip a beat. Let me hammer this home. President Trump wants to make this a spot where people can live in peace. A pause, then she laid it down, clear, solid. He's the peacemaker in chief. A few glances swapped, not shock, but recognition. They'd heard that line before and knew the score. He proved it loud and clear in his first term. The issue wasn't dead, but the momentum had shifted. How's it gonna happen? The president and his crew are talking to our allies in the region to figure out the next play. Not over, but the game was on her turf now. Then another voice, quick, sharp, not letting the moment slip. But should Americans brace for U.S. troops on the ground, slugging it out with Hamas? The room held its breath. Not scared, just wired. Karoline didn't check with anyone, didn't peek at notes. She had this cold. Again, the president hasn't locked in U.S. troops for the region. Then, slow, rock solid. But it's on the table. A front row reporter blinked, double-checking he'd heard right. Someone in back leaned in a hair, like they knew what might drop next. Pens hit pads, screens flashed as headlines took shape. She didn't commit, but she didn't nix it either. If the last question was a loaded gun, this one was a live grenade. Garrett leaned in, voice even, calculated, not just for the room, but for every voter watching at home. On Gaza, the president spent his whole public life trashing foreign messes, nation building, sending U.S. troops to fight overseas, especially in the Middle East. He paused, letting it settle, then went for the kill. This plan looks like it could end up with all that. Can you square this flip-flop? And how does building and owning Gaza jive with America first? Heads turned, not at Karoline, but at each other. This was the question, not about troops, not about aid, but about Trump breaking his own rules. Karoline took it in stride. No hesitation, no irritation. She tilted her head a smidge, like she was weighing it, then picked it apart piece by piece. I'd push back on your setup, she started, firm but not picking a fight, that this somehow drags the U.S. into an overseas tangle. She let that hang a second, then drove it home. The president hasn't signed up for boots on the ground in Gaza. First line of defense. Not new, but reframed. This wasn't war. It was strategy. He's also said the U.S. isn't footing the bill to rebuild Gaza. Second punch. Nailing the idea this was another big spend intervention, she adjusted the mic, voice unshaken. His administration's gonna work with partners in the region to fix this place up. Straightforward, but the message was loud. This ain't America's tab. It's a deal to cut. She stepped back, not literally, but in her pitch, widening the lens. Let me zoom out a sec, because this is a wild card idea, but that's Donald Trump to a T. A few scribbled notes catching the pivot. That's why Americans voted him in. There it was, the first real turn. This wasn't clashing with America first. It was America first in motion. His endgame's lasting peace in the Middle East. For everybody there. No nation-building talk, no troop chatter. She cast it as a win, not a war. Then she tightened the screws. Like I said up top, for decades, the same old crowd's been peddling the same old fixes for this mess. No names, didn't need them. Everyone knew who she meant. And it's been made damn clear to the president that the U.S. has to be in on this rebuild to keep the region steady. For everyone. Another shift. Not stuck, not bankrolling, but steering. Before anyone could jump in, she locked it down. That doesn't mean troops in Gaza. Doesn't mean American taxpayers are on the hook. Then the clincher. It means Donald Trump, the best damn deal maker alive, is gonna hash out a deal with our partners over there. A faint smirk. Not cocky, just sure. A few leaned forward, not 'cause they didn't see it coming, but 'cause it just locked in as a headline. This wasn't a U-turn. This was Trump doing Trump. For a hot second, the room felt like a courtroom. Everyone waiting for a roll call of heavy-hitting allies backing Trump's Gaza play. Instead, Karoline did her thing, smashing expectations before they could stick. Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, a reporter fired off. They've already shot this down. So who's actually on board, if anybody? A loaded pause. Karoline leaned in a touch, not rattled, not backpedaling, just poised. The president's been floating this idea for a while now, she said. Not a snap call. A few skeptical looks bounced around. Floating? D.C. speak for testing waters without locking in. She let the tension sit half a beat, then sliced through. First foreign leader, he called. President El-Sisi of Egypt. No guesswork, fact. Next week, he's sitting down with King Abdullah of Jordan. More fact. He's talked straight up with the King of Bahrain and Saudi Arabia's crown prince. Typing picked up. Now it wasn't just about who said no, but who Trump's still working. Momentum flipped fast. A new voice jumped in, switching gears. Karoline, want to see something? A screen flickered. Gaza, Fox News footage looping through a post-apocalypse nightmare. Crumbled buildings, streets turned to dust, a place that didn't look fit for life. The voice came back. This ain't livable for humans. No water, no power. You really think families can build a life here? Not just doubt, it came with receipts. Karoline didn't blink. I've seen those shots, she said. The president has too. Cameras zoomed. Fact is, Steve Witkoff, one of the president's top guys, went to Gaza himself. Saw it with his own eyes, snapped pics, showed him straight to Trump. That shifted the room. This wasn't Trump calling shots from a penthouse. This was Trump getting the raw truth from a trusted hand. And the president made this call, Karoline went on, with a heart for everybody in that region. Then a curveball nobody saw coming. Karoline, got a question on today's executive order. Eyebrows shot up. Gaza war to U.S. home front now? But the reporter didn't waver. How's this going to hit the 2028 Summer Olympics in L.A.? A few smirks swapped, not because it wasn't legit, but because they knew where this was headed. Say, he added, a guy identifying as a transgender woman, can he compete as a female on U.S. soil? If there was a moment to see Karoline pivot like a pro, this was it. No stumble, no stall. She smiled. Good question. And just like that, Gaza was yesterday's news. The president's laid it out. He expects the Olympic Committee and NCAA to stop letting men compete in women's sports. Laptops clicked open. This was fresh meat. And with his pen today, he's kicking off a loud and proud pressure campaign to make sure those groups do right by women and girls across the country. Pivot done. 1 minute it's war, global stakes, America and Gaza. The next it's protecting women's sports. And somehow Trump's smack in the middle of both. His way. A ripple ran through the room. Karoline had just drawn the line. The president's signature would kill off biological men in women's sports. It was still sinking in when a voice from the third row cut through. What about the media? It landed like a dart. Outfits like HRC and GLAAD still call men transgender females. Where's the White House at on that? Karoline didn't budge. This administration's policy is dead simple, she said, voice crisp. 2 sexes, male and female. That's it. A beat of quiet, then keyboards erupted. A few swapped looks, waiting for more. But nada. No wiggle, no softening, just the plain truth. Then a voice from across the room. Karoline, on USAID, folks are eyeballing where taxpayer cash is flowing lately, and now it looks like some media outlets are getting direct handouts from the agency. She glanced up. Which ones? A pause. Politico, for one. That did it. Room shifted, slight but real. Eyes flicked toward the Politico rep. Fingers hovered over keys, recalculating. Karoline tweaked the mic, face blank. Right before I walked in, she said, I got word USAID's funding media, including Politico. A hush. Then a guy from the left side leaned in. How much? No note-checking needed. Over $8 million in taxpayer money, she said, to cover Politico subscriptions. Murmurs, paper rustling. Someone in back let out a low whistle. The Politico guy was a statue. That's done. Typing ramped up, whispers traded. A hand shot up. So to be clear, USAID, she cut in. DOJ is axing those payments as we speak. Heads turned. Shit was moving quick. This administration's combing every line in the federal budget. A pause. If it doesn't help Americans, it's toast. The buzz settled, but the weight hung heavy. A voice from the right broke in. Is this really a smart way to spend American tax dollars? No clarification needed. Everyone got it. USAID, government waste, billions vanishing. She nodded small. If it ain't, she said, that cash won't go overseas anymore. And that hustle's going to save American taxpayers real money. Another reporter leaned in. But a bunch of Dems are pissed about these cuts, he said. Not the waste, but the spotlight on it. Karoline crossed her arms. Want to know who doesn't give a damn about America's best interests? She said. Check who's mad that Ilhan's airing the dirty laundry. Murmurs, keys clacking, then the numbers hit like a freight train. $5 million to Ben Stiller to hang with Zelensky in Ukraine. A few blinked. $600 million for Starbucks coffee cups for the government. Whispers kicked up. It's a racket, And if you ask me, she let it hang a sec. It's money laundering. Some shifted, others looked up, pens poised. They grabbed taxpayer dollars, funnel them through pet projects, and somehow, she waved vague, it always lands in the right pockets. A pause. Not anymore. Before the air could cool, a voice from the back piped up. Gonna throw some love to the back. We hear they've barely gotten a word in for years. A few chuckles. Reagan, go for it. A reporter from the far left stood. Thanks, Karoline. WHCA just said comedian Amber Ruffin's hosting this year's dinner. Heads turned. She once called the president a toddler with his pants down. Any take, and will he show? Karoline shrugged light. Definitely a bold pick. Some grins, some raised brows. I've got the president's invite on my desk, she went on. Mine too. A beat. Haven't checked with the boss, but when he decides, I'll let y'all know. The room wasn't quiet. Not this time. She'd barely wrapped when a voice jumped in. On that executive order getting signed today, you said it'll be enforced. How? What level? Schools? Worldwide? Another cut in before she could answer. And human rights groups say this could open kids up to discrimination. Karoline tilted her head a touch. Open kids up to discrimination? She echoed, like she was tasting the words. Then no hesitation. You mean like forcing little girls to shower with biological guys in locker rooms? The room went still. Or making them compete against someone with a built-in edge so big they never had a prayer? Not harsh, but it hit like bricks. If you're hunting for discrimination victims, start there. She didn't let the quiet drag. As for enforcement, she glanced at her watch. In about an hour and a half, this is federal law. A shrug. Schools ought to fall in line. Pretty straightforward. She pointed elsewhere. Taylor, Spectrum News. You talk Doge. Elon Musk's special government employee. He's also got companies with billions in federal contracts. Conflict of interest? The Musk question, here it was. Karoline let out a breath, not annoyed, not defensive, just amused. You think Elon Musk's in this for the cash? She let it dangle a second. Richest guy on the planet doesn't need a hustle on the side. A stifled laugh from the back. If there's a conflict, Elon will step back. President said it, Elon said it. A shrug. And seeing as he's followed every federal rule, that's more than you can say for most of D.C. A cough, a key clack. She rolled on before anyone could butt in. Trade guy Peter Navarro says tariffs will cut taxes for Americans. White House line? She didn't blink. President's always been straight. Tariffs tax foreign countries. A beat. And before income tax, America ran on tariffs, and we were never richer. Someone muttered in back. She ignored it. Now, if you're saying we roll back to 1913, pre-income tax, she paused, scanned the room. I'd love to see some of y'all pony up 90% of your paycheck to Uncle Sam. But maybe that's the other side's next pitch. A pause, then laughs, real, awkward, unavoidable. She clasped her hands. Next. A hand went up. Karoline, you said Elon's not in it for money, but he's cashing in on government contracts. How's that work? She exhaled light, like she'd been waiting. Funny thing, she said, glancing around. Elon Musk dropped millions backing Trump's campaign. That got ears perked. He's not here to pad his wallet. Guy's got two missions. Colonizing Mars and stopping this government from bleeding cash like a drunk at a bar. A few chuckles. And if cutting waste means stepping on toes, trust me, he's doing it without a second thought. She leaned in a hair. I don't think folks hate Elon because they think he's crooked. She tilted her head. I think they just can't stomach one dude killing it in so many lanes. A pause. And let's be real. If we're talking jealousy, we know which party's got that bug bad. Another jumped in. Karoline, if Trump actually kills the income tax, that'd be historic, right? No pause. If Donald Trump axes the federal income tax, it's not just historic. He'll go down as one of the all-time great presidents. She let it land. Hell, if he pulls that off, we ought to start carving him into Mount Rushmore. That sealed it. Some swapped amused looks, a few smirked, couple pens tapped pads, probably jotting headlines. She shrugged. 'Cause truth is, before Trump, no politician had the guts to even float this. A beat. Why? He ain't a politician. She tapped the podium light. He's a businessman, and America? He's running it like a business. A question hovered. So, we looking at America's golden age? Karoline breathed out. Not frustration, but a grin tugging at her. If Trump pulls this off, if we actually ditch the income tax, a small knowing smile crept up, I'd say buckle up. The room went quiet. Not disbelief, not shock, but something else. The vibe that maybe, just maybe, the impossible was in play. She let it hang a second longer, then with smooth ease, adjusted the mic, gave a nod, and turned on her heel. The door clicked shut, muffling the chaos that erupted behind her. The tension, the back and forth, the push-pull. It was all part of the dance, and she just nailed every step. Karoline let out a breath as she strode down the long hallway. The morning had been a grinder, relentless. But now it was just noon. She dug into her bag, fished out her phone. One text glowed. Elon Musk. Solid performance? Lunch at the usual spot? She smirked, shook her head, typed back, Karoline. I don't get paid enough for this crap. Sent. She stepped outside, DC's bright sun smacking her face. She didn't slow down. Not today. The golden age was just getting started.